Hello, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to our free class, Soothing Anxiety Through Concepts from Yoga and Ayurveda. My name is Lisa Dumas.
And I'm Amy Pruitt.
I am an experienced yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for about a decade. I practice yoga therapy, and I'm also a coach specializing in helping people move through anxiety.
And I am a registered nurse. I am also an Ayurvedic practitioner and a yoga teacher. And I specialize in helping women overcome burnout and grief.
Amy and I first met at a training that we took a couple of years ago. It was a somatic coaching training where we learned a lot of the tools that we then put through our own lenses, and that's what we share with others. And we got on so well that we decided that we would work together. We've been teaching together for a couple of years, and now you can hear us every week on the Radiant Warrior podcast, which is real talk in this real world about how concepts and practices from yoga and Ayurveda can help us live more bravely and boldly from a more peaceful place. We like to say it helps us to reclaim our courageous hearts.
Absolutely.
So a little bit more about us and how we came to yoga and Ayurveda. In my early 20s, I had my first anxiety attack. And the term anxiety has gotten pretty normalized. And in some ways, that's great because we're talking about it and there's a little less shame when it comes to anxiety attacks. But that doesn't take away how terrifying it is for those of you who've ever suffered with an episode of panic. I was rushed to the hospital. I thought for sure that I was having a heart attack or a stroke. And Amy, as a registered nurse, I know we've talked about this on the podcast. Amy sees this all the time. It's so terrifying. And unfortunately for me and for so many people who sink into disordered anxiety, life becomes about fear and fearing that next panic attack. And long story short, over the course of another 15 years or so, my life just got smaller and smaller as I became even afraid to drive by myself in a car because what if I had a panic attack? And I had heard over the years that yoga and meditation really helped. And when I got to my bottom, when I realized that I was just losing all of my independence, I finally made it to a yoga class in San Diego where I was living at the time. And it happened to be just a sweet spot. And I felt so safe. And right away, that class, with its attention to the breath and its attention to my body and how I was placing my feet, it helped me to become present for probably the first time in years. And it helped me to soothe my nervous system, although I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was that 90 minutes later, I felt completely at ease and calm. And I've spent the last decade learning why that happened and just feeling so compelled to share it with others.
I love how you describe that, Lisa. I think so many people could relate to what you're speaking about when it comes to your story with anxiety. So my story is I came to yoga and Ayurveda after suffering from burnout for a very long time and not even realizing that that's what I was afflicted with. And working in the emergency department for over 20 years and long hours and being witness to a lot of losses and putting that career ahead of my own life really brought me to a brink when it came to burnout. And as I worked through this recovery of burnout, I found out that the burnout was driving me away from facing grief. And so using yoga and Ayurveda to work on this long-standing chronic grief that I had from many losses in my life, and also working with the burnout, has really caused me to find a new sense of vitality in my life, when I was in it, in the burnout, I wasn't really feeling much of anything. And I liken it to just being on a fast moving train and not even really seeing what was happening in my life go by, and not really experiencing the things, the good things, the bad things, any of the things. I was just numb to it all. And finding yoga and Ayurveda really saved my life. And I'm so excited to share these gifts with everyone else. So I want to thank the viewers and thank the listeners of our podcast for going along on the ride with us, because this has just been a joy for me.
We do invite you, if you haven't listened to our podcast yet, to do so. You'll learn a lot more about Amy and I and the tools that we use every day to help us to reclaim our courageous hearts. Today's class is about this big loaded word, anxiety. So from a Western perspective, anxiety occurs for a number of reasons. It could be that we are suffering from chaotic, unquestioned thoughts, and our nervous system is constantly being triggered by fear-based thoughts. And then we have these scary sensations in our body as our nervous system moves into fight or flight, right? A lot of things happen to prepare us to run away from danger, even if it was just an email that we were reading from a coworker that got us a little bit worked up. Anxiety occurs because of maybe some unhelpful habits or patterns in our life and the way that we're treating ourselves. Maybe something has been disturbing our sleep for a long time. Maybe we're suffering from some addictions. Maybe it starts by something internal. You know, for me, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. I was in my 20s. It was early in my career. I wasn't sleeping a lot. I was staying up really late. My nutrition was probably not on point. Now, this is not to say that I'm making anything my fault. There's no blame here. Sometimes it can be hereditary. Sometimes it can just seemingly come out of nowhere. But it can also build up because we've been nervous and worried. We might just have that constitution. And as Amy will share in a moment, you know, from an Ayurvedic perspective, there can be different imbalances. So from a yogic perspective, yoga views the human body in this very multi-layered way. Think about the peels of an onion, and we call those the koshas, or these sheaths or veils. And each layer is shrouding who we truly are. And I like to think of true nature, as yoga teaches us, is right at the core of us, is this part of us that has never been afraid. That was always really helpful for me. But from an Eastern perspective, our outermost layer is our physical body. So anxiety shows up there in physical sensations that tell our brain something is wrong. And then our mind goes into these chaotic, unquestioned thinking. And then we start this vicious cycle with sensations in the body, scary thoughts in the mind, and on it goes. The next kosha or sheath is pranamaya kosha, and that's our breath body. And there could be an imbalance there. And that's one of the things that we're going to teach you today. It could be that our breath pattern is actually triggering our fight or flight nervous system in itself. So you'll be able to find that out shortly. The next sheath is manomaya kosha. So that's the layer of the storytelling mind. That's the conscious mind. And for a lot of us, we're not seeing the world as it truly is. You know, something will happen and we'll make it so it was our fault, or we somehow weren't good enough, or we didn't do enough. And in many cases, that's not seeing life as it truly is. That's seeing life through a worried and anxious lens. And then our brains are like computers, and I'm sure we can all agree we have one negative thought about ourselves and we can find all of that evidence. We have one fearful thought and we can find more and more evidence. And then again, the nervous system is reacting. From a yoga perspective, the breath and the body and the mind are all so intricately connected. If our breath is shallow, then our thoughts are typically quick and chaotic. If our thoughts are wild, our breath will be quick and shallow, which in itself creates unhealthy stress and anxiety. Going further into the onion, we come to the Vijnanamaya kosha, which is our more intuitive mind. And here there can also be a sheath that is covering the truth of our inner teacher and our inner wisdom. So we can be a little cloudy there, and working with meditation can help us there. And the idea is, when we're working from a yoga perspective to heal anxiety, that we are working to balance all of these different layers. And when we have lifted those veils, then we do have access to who we truly are, and the inner contentment that arises from just being here and being alive. We all have those moments of pristine presence when we see something gorgeous in nature, or when Amy spends time with her beautiful grandchildren and she hears them laugh, or we have that moment where we're just so fully present, and it's like a sensation washes over us that all will be okay. So these practices that I've come to on the yoga mat and on the meditation mat, not to create expectations, but the idea is that we can lead ourselves back home to that place, into that remembering of contentment a little bit more often. And then I'm living proof. It becomes a little bit more easier to step into that place, to find the present moment, the moment where we can decide, what have I been thinking, and how's my breath, and is there anything truly to be afraid of right here? Because from that moment, from the present moment, usually everything is okay. So that's just a little bit about anxiety from Western perspective and a yoga perspective.
I love how you describe the koshas, because I think it gives all of us such a visual of moving into that space of our true nature. So working with the koshas, I think, is so powerful in combating not just anxiety, but also burnout or seeking our true nature. It just provides that perfect structure.
Mm-hmm.
So from an Ayurvedic perspective with anxiety, I want to just describe a little bit what the doshas are. So in Ayurveda, we are made up of certain constitutions, and there are three main constitutions in Ayurveda. There's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and we all have all three of them in us. And anxiety is thought to be an imbalance in the Vata dosha. So the Vata dosha, if you break it down, is made up of the elements of air and ether. And from an anxiety standpoint, you can kind of begin to tap into that, because we have these swirling thoughts, and we feel maybe butterflies in our stomach, and we feel a lot of movement, and our heart is racing. And that's Vata dosha that you can actually feel in your body. So the imbalance of Vata dosha is what creates anxiety. And the way that we can bring Vata back into balance is by bringing in the qualities that are opposite. So Vata is made up of air and ether, which by nature is cold and dry and mobile and not stable and very light. And we can see that in nature as we're moving into fall. We can see that in nature if we just look out the window. If we see the wind blowing, we see the trees moving, we see the leaves that are scattering, we might get a sense of what Vata feels like inside our body by looking outside. And so to balance Vata, we bring in the opposing qualities. So if Vata is light and dry and mobile and unstable, we want to bring in the opposing qualities, things that are heavy and grounding and stable. And we can do that in many, many ways. One of the ways that we can do that is with bringing in routines, bringing in a stable routine, having the same time of day that you wake up in the morning, the same time of day that you go to bed at night, eating your meals at a predictable time, So if we create that predictability in our daily schedule, it gives our body and our mind something to predict. And when we can predict things, it kind of takes that fear or that anxiety maybe down a notch. We can also bring in those opposing qualities with our foods. So moving away from foods that are cold or raw and having our food be well cooked or well spiced, having food that is very grounding in nature, so food that is full of root vegetables or food that is in season in the fall is another way that we can bring vata into balance. Getting good quality sleep, going to bed, and that might be a stretch as we're dealing with anxiety, but if we can practice that over time, it can bring in that grounding sense as well. So those are a few of the Ayurvedic ways that you can balance vata, as vata, when it is out of balance, is considered to be the driver of anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And now we're going to share with you a couple of practical tools that you can do to soothe your anxious mind and body. So Amy and I thought, before we're leading you through them and telling you a little bit more about anxiousness from a yoga and Ayurveda perspective, that we could have you take a moment and set an intention for this class. What made you click on the link? What made you sign up to be sent this program? And we'd also like to invite you to remember that if you did sign up to be sent this free class, then there's already some awareness there that there could be a little bit more joy in your life, that you realize that this is something that you can work through and maybe even befriend and learn from, and then take what you learned from going through anxiousness, from living with worry, from living with fear, and take the lessons to help you evolve into the next great version of who you are. It's really true that awareness is already half the battle. So if you're watching this and you have an awareness of, I really feel that my inner dialogue is an unkind place to be. I feel as though my worries are affecting my life negatively. If you already know that, then you're already on your way to healing. And these techniques and tools, they really just help guide us home to the wisdom and the insight that already lives there. So we can go to lots of teachers and we'll learn lots of things that can help, but we would really just like to remind you here that you have the capacity to move through this. And I think a key when it comes to working with anxiety is to unburden yourself from the shackles of defining yourself as somebody with anxiety, right, Amy? Like, you probably see this in the healthcare system. We're diagnosed and then we're put in a box, and then, you know, we have to remember that our bodies listen to everything that we say. And so if we're walking around saying, I have anxiety, I'm anxious, I'm worried, then we're just telling our bodies over and over again how to be reacting.
Right, right. By saying I'm anxious, you're not leaving room for much else. You know, you're just identifying yourself as anxious and not all the other beautiful qualities that you have.
Exactly, exactly. That was so beautifully said. So take a moment, take a deep breath in, and a nice long exhale. That exhale is so tied to calming down the nervous system, to bringing that rest or digest parasympathetic aspect of the nervous system online. And sometimes just one exhalation is all it takes to really calm ourselves down. And take a moment and choose, you know, your intention. What is it that you're cultivating? What is it that you're wanting to let go of? What is it that you're creating, and how would you like to feel? It's powerful to make that choice and then to use your intention as your North Star in the hours and days following this class. You can say, okay, is this thought, is this action, are these words bringing me closer to my intention or further away? It's always nice to start each class with an intention. And if you ever get to join us at a live workshop or a retreat in the future, We definitely do a lot of that intention setting to start. So the breath, so important when it comes to working with anxiety. And what I'll invite us to do here is just to place one hand to the belly, just between the belly button and the pubic bone, and one hand to the chest. Then if you can, and you know, for a lot of us, this is a little tricky. We invite you to soften all the places below the navel. So soften that lower abdomen. And a lot of us are taught to suck that in. And also, if we're feeling anxious, we hold a lot of tension there. So just me guiding you into softening there, that may take a while. But if it does, that's already a difference too. If we can release the holding and the tension and the bracing there. And if you can, now as you inhale, see if the belly can fill and expand before the chest. That's why I have you placing one hand at the belly and one hand at the chest. If this doesn't immediately come naturally to you, if when you breathe in, you feel the chest rising and no movement in the belly, there may be some work to be done with allowing the inhale to fill and expand the belly first. In our world, we might call that reverse breathing, so that you're breathing more into the chest, and that kind of breathing itself does trigger our fight or flight aspect of the nervous system, bringing on feelings of anxiety. So if you're having situations where nothing is going on and you're still feeling sensations of anxiety in your body, one reason could be this reverse breathing that you have going on. So see if you can allow the belly to fill and expand first, then the rib cage expands, and then the chest. And add imagery to this breath as well. Can you picture the breath moving up the length of the torso from belly towards head? And then can you picture the exhale moving down the length of your torso, watching relaxation over your body? And I should mention that at this point, if it doesn't feel good for you to sit up, you could be laying down and just listening to my voice with one hand at the belly and one hand at the chest. It might even be easier to have the belly fill and expand first. And just explore that for a few rounds. This is called 3-part breath. So you're filling the abdomen, expanding the rib cage in all directions, then expanding collarbones. And then use imagery to picture the breath moving down from shoulders all the way to your seat. And the next step here is at the end of the exhalation, bring your awareness to the parts of your body that are connected to the floor. So if you're lying down, at the end of that exhalation, scan all of the contact points between your body and the floor. If you're seated, at the end of that exhalation, notice your seat and its connection to floor, and see if you can allow yourself to sink into that support more. As Amy mentioned, from an Ayurvedic perspective, anxiety is vata. It's air, it's mobility, it's unstable. So here, I'm inviting you to feel your ground. You can do this standing by feeling your feet on the floor. You can do this seated by just noticing how you feel seated in that chair. Notice the parts of your body that are connected to something solid. And the more you deeply breathe, and the more you lengthen your exhalations, which is also another key, you might count to 4 breaths in and 7 counts out. Notice that the more you let go and the more you let your body know it's safe to relax, the more you are held. And if it feels safe to close your eyes, and then continue to feel your physical body. We all know that the mind is rarely present. The mind tells us a lot of stories that we need to learn to question. The mind jumps into the future and taunts us with everything that could go wrong. It takes us into the past, causing shame and regret. But right here, right now, anchored into sensations of our physical body, typically everything is okay. So dive into the sensations of touch. Move from feeling the parts of your body that are connected to something to sensations in your fingertips. See if you can feel all of your fingertips at one time. Feel the aliveness in both of your hands. No thinking about that, just feeling all of that sensation. And the more you allow yourself to simply witness and notice sensation in the hands and the fingertips, the less room there is for ruminations. Keep the breath flowing. And then add on sensations. Air coming towards you. Fabric moving on skin as you breathe. Add in the senses. Focus on nothing but listening. Just now, listen to the furthest sound from you. And then sounds that are a little closer. Feel cool air moving in through your nose. Notice without thinking, just notice any scent. And feel warm air moving out. Even though eyes are closed, if they are closed, notice what you see. Even noticing taste in mouth. No thinking. Just becoming the curious witness. And yoga teaches us that that is related to our true nature, part of us that is witnessing and watching. The more adept you become to feeling sensations in your body, to observing your connection to earth, to observing sensations in body, maybe befriending sensations in body rather than fearing them, then you start to get practice at noticing your thoughts instead of just reacting to each and every one of them. And then finally, the last practical tool that I'll show you, it's a mudra. And from a yogic perspective, mudras, which are different movements that we make with our hands, sometimes our face or our body, that is thought to have a direct effect on that pranamaya kosha, the breath body, the energy body. And that may feel theoretical to you, but everybody that I teach this mudra to feels it. Again, no expectations, but this just might be a little ninja weapon that you can use when you need to. I use it a lot if I'm feeling nervous in a group. And it's a simple mudra. You're just tucking your thumbs into the palms of your hands and you're wrapping your forefingers loosely around the thumb. You're making fists like that. You're turning your fists down. And I know that they hide from the screen, but then you just rest those fists softly on your thighs. And then maybe you can practice your 3-part breath, closing the eyes if you feel safe to do so, allowing the belly to fill and expand, then the rib cage, then the collarbones, visualizing the breath moving down. So you think of that downward flow of prana, downward flow of breath. Sometimes we feel anxious if there is a deficiency in that particular flow of prana. So visualizing breath moving down to the base of your body also adds ground to Vata. And then just maybe you're noticing some sort of calming from this mudra. This is known to soothe the nervous system. Adi Mudra, A-D-H-I. So to recap, your new tools for soothing an anxious mind and body from my perspective, from a yoga perspective, that you can add to your anxiety busting toolkit is long breaths, especially a long exhalation. They're like a sigh of relief for your body. Connecting with your body's connection to something solid. Connecting with your senses. So the more you connect with your body, you're connecting with this anchor of the present moment. The mind, not so much. Body, it's always present. So let's learn from our body. Befriending sensations in our body. And then practicing a mudra, Adi Mudra. And just noticing if that worked for you.
It worked for me.
Me too.
So I wanted to offer a few more tools from an Ayurvedic perspective. I had offered earlier about creating routines that support you. And I want you to imagine if you know of a toddler in your life, and if you've ever asked the parent of a toddler to disrupt their routine, and what chaos ensues when a toddler's routine is disrupted, whether it's they miss a meal or their bedtime routine is disrupted. And I invite you all to return to that state and really be a little more rigid, maybe, with your routines around eating and around sleeping, and to create rituals around those two activities that really support you. So we go in this life that we have, and we're so busy and we're so overscheduled, and we go until it's time for bed, and then we drop into bed and think that we'll go right to sleep. And that rarely happens for most, I imagine. So maybe backing that routine up a little bit and drawing out your bedtime routine in a way that really grounds you and soothes you and supports you, whether it's a warm bath, whether it's putting oil on your skin that feels nice but also might have a soothing scent, like Lisa so beautifully described, bringing your senses into your toolkit, bringing scents such as lavender that can be exceptionally soothing. The heaviness of oil, I had spoke earlier about bringing in the opposing qualities of vata. So vata is cold and dry. If we can keep ourselves warm. And it's such a simple thing, but I don't think we give it enough credit when we are in the midst of anxiety. But if we can keep ourselves warm, whether it's having a scarf with you or wearing warm fuzzy socks and really bundling up and snuggling in, I don't know about you, but for me, that is very soothing and calming. And then with our foods, again, having meals that are at regular times can be very predictable and very activating for our parasympathetic system. We live in the sympathetic, the fight or flight or freeze system. And if we could move more into the parasympathetic system, the rest and digest system, we can really help to soothe that anxious mind and that anxious body. And doing that with regular meal times is one of the ways that we can do that. Really spending a lot of time being able to rest and digest. We eat on the go, we eat processed foods maybe. And if you could bring in foods that are more whole foods or well-cooked foods, that can activate the parasympathetic as well.
We have so much more to share with you. We've really just scratched the surface. So if you're interested in going deeper with these concepts like the koshas and the doshas and breath techniques and movement, Amy and I are putting together really the work of our life. We're so honored to share with you that starting at the end of September, we're going to be launching our monthly program that we're calling A Radiant Year. So you can join us weekly on our Radiant Warrior podcast. And so this is our related program that we're going to share with you. And the idea is that each and every week, you'll spend time with us like this. We will be delivering a very rich, well thought out recorded class straight to your inbox because we know you're busy and we want you to be able to experience the class in your own time, in your own way, in the comfort of your home. And each week we'll be delivering more insights and concepts and inspirations and tools. They're also themed for the season. We are very consciously launching a radiant year in the fall because fall is when that dosha of vata can be most volatile within our systems, and that does bring on symptoms of anxiousness. So throughout our fall classes, we'll be delving into tools from yoga, from Ayurveda, everything from recipes to meditation to journaling to visualization and so much more, but it will all be themed seasonally.
I love it. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're really just scratching the surface in a class like this. And so we'd like to invite all of you to go over to aradiantyear.com and look into the course a little bit more. Not only will you get a weekly recorded video like this, which will be much more lengthy and much more complete. Again, it's hard for us not to say more and more. There's so much to offer and so much to say, but this is just a little bit of a teaser. But we'll also include some PDFs for you, lots of different content, and ways in which to be supported by the community too, Amy.
Yes. So we'll have a private Facebook group that we will be very active in to answer your questions and to support each other as we journey over the next year together.
So this is your official invite to spend a year with us and sampling and exploring different tools and techniques so you can build your own customized toolbox of techniques to not just overcome worry and anxiety, but to also heal burnout and the thought of, how am I going to get it all done? This course is for anyone who feels like they could be experiencing just a little bit more joy. This course is helpful for anyone that worries. Anyone who has a mind will be helped will be soothed, I think, from the tools that we're offering. We're offering tools for the mind, so questioning your thoughts, we'll teach you how to do that. Tools for the heart, and tools for the body. So aradiantyear.com. We hope that you decide to take the plunge and join us, and we look forward to getting to know you more.
We can't wait to see you on the inside.